Today, I'm exposing the exact math I used to retire 19 years early. Not theory, my actual formula, line by line, even exposing the parts that may sound reckless. Here's your problem. You typed your numbers into a retirement calculator once or twice. It handed you a 7-figure number, and you quietly decided that early retirement was just not for you. But that number is indeed not a fact. It's a price tag on a very specific promise. And almost nobody tells you what that promise actually is. I retired at 48 with close to $500,000. No pension, I rent, I pay for my own healthcare, and every calculator I ran said that it was impossible. So 3 things today: where that inflated number comes from and what it's actually charging you for, the 2 levers that actually move your retirement date, and which one almost everyone ignores: the property, the penalty I paid, and the risk I took with my eyes wide open. And this can't wait, because every year you spend deciding costs, you lose the one asset you can never earn back: time. So stick around, because at the end, I'll give you a free Claude skill I built called Find Your Date, plus a 1-page guide in case you want to fill it out yourself. It calculates your actual retirement date, and it's free in my Freedom Operating System community on School. I'm Emilio, retired at 48, traveling the world and living my own freedom. I share the systems that work to keep me here. If retiring sooner on your own terms is something you actually want, subscribe and turn on the bell. If you appreciate this type of content, gently tap that like button. Let's get into it. All right, first up, where does that number come from? Let's start with something almost everybody gets wrong, including me, for years. Most people will tell you the official retirement age is 65. It isn't. 65 is when you become eligible for Medicare, which is health coverage, and that's it. The actual official retirement age, what the Social Security Administration calls your full retirement age, is 67 for anyone born in 1960 or later. That's when you can claim your full benefit. Take it earlier and it's permanently cut lower. So 67 is the official default in the US. That's the finish line you were handed at your first job without anyone asking if you agreed to it. I stopped at 48, and if you do the math, that's 19 years earlier. That's where the number in the title comes from. And I want you to see that subtraction, because the rest of this video is gonna be exactly that honest. Now, let's start with that 7-figure number. Almost every retirement calculator on earth is running one idea underneath it, and it's called the 4% rule. Let's explain that in plain English, because the term gets thrown around like everybody already knows it. A withdrawal rate is simply this: out of a pile of money you saved, what percentage do you pull out to live in 1 year? If you have $100,000 and you take out $4,000 that year, your withdrawal rate is 4%. The 4% rule says if you never pull out more than 4% of your savings each year, your money should last you 30 years. And that gives you a shortcut everybody uses. 100 divided by 4 is 25. So take what you spend in a year, multiply by 25, and that's your number. Here's mine. I spend about $72,000 a year. 72,000 times 25 is $1,800,000. That's what the standard math says I needed before I was allowed to stop. I had close to 500,000. So according to the rule, I was short by roughly 1,300,000. Not a little short. Short by almost double what I actually had. And I want to be really clear here. I'm not about to tell you that the math is broken or the calculators are lying to you or any of that. They're not lying. They're answering a question very accurately, and the question is almost certainly not the one you meant to ask. Let me show you one of those screens right now. This isn't some fringe website. This is Charles Schwab, the Schwab Bank, a Main Street retirement calculator, the kind that your own bank puts on its homepage. It's free, it's trusted, and running the same assumptions the whole industry runs on. Watch what I put in. This is my real situation. My current age, I'm going to put in what I retired with, which is 48, and the age I plan to retire. I tried, it doesn't let me put 48, so I can give it an example, but it lets me put in 49, so I'll put in 49, which is being generous to myself because I already stopped. Investment style, I'll put in low risk. Nothing exotic, nothing leveraged, just the boring option. And as you see, this is 7% it's using. And it's using 1971 to 2025. So not the 4% we talk about usually, but 7% is what they use on this estimate. And we'll press next. Now the money, household income, I'll put in 200,000. How much money I save for retirement? I'll put in the 500,000 that I retired with. How much do you plan to save for retirement every year? I'll just put it in 0 right now, since I'm already retired. Will you receive Social Security benefits? I just put no, so we won't calculate that. How much supplemental income? I'm gonna pretend I have 0 income other than Social Security or anything later on. Estimate of dollar amount of percentage of income. So annual retirement spending estimate. I'm just gonna put a gross amount. It's asking including taxes, but we'll just make it easy here. 72,000. Then we'll click next. Nothing dramatic, nothing exaggerated, just to make a point. And I'm not touching any of the advanced settings. I'm answering this exactly the way a normal person would on a Sunday afternoon, which is how almost everybody meets this number for the first time. Click next. And there it is. 7 figures before I'm apparently allowed to stop working. Now I want you to look at what it never asked me. If you look at what it did ask me, it never asked me whether I'd earn another dollar again. Going back here so you can look at that. And I'll scroll back. So it never asked me whether I could cut spending in a bad year. Not by $10,000, not by 1,000. It never asked me what else I own. It never asked me what I do if this stopped working. It never asked me the question that actually mattered to me, which is what I'd be willing to trade off to get 19 years earlier. Didn't ask any of that because the rule underneath it already assumed the answers. And every single answer it assumed is no, never. Not once for 30 years. Hold that thought because that assumption is the whole ball game. So what is that number actually pricing? It's pricing 4 promises at once. And you never agreed to any of them. Promise 1, you will never earn another dollar for the rest of your life. Not a part-time job, not a hobby that pays, not one freelance invoice, 0, forever. Not one freelance invoice, 0, forever. Promise 2, you will never change your spending. Not in a crash, not in a good year, not ever. The same amount comes out, adjusted for inflation, no matter what the world is doing. Promise 3, it has to hold for 30 years or more without ever adapting even once. And promise 4, the big one, it has to survive the single worst 30-year stretch in recorded financial history. Because that is how the 4% rule was built. Somebody went back through decades of market data, found the absolute worst window a retiree could have picked, and set the ratio so that even that person would not run out of money. Read those 4 back to yourself. That isn't a retirement plan. That's an insurance policy against the worst outcome that has ever happened, sold to a person who has promised to sit perfectly still for 3 decades. And insurance against that worst case is expensive. That's why the number is so big. Now, is that bad? Honestly, no. If you genuinely want to walk away and never think about money again, and never work again, and never change anything, then that's a number that's right for you, and you should respect it. Some people want exactly that, and they should get it, but that wasn't what I wanted, and I suspect that isn't what you want either, or you wouldn't be watching a video about retiring 19 years early. I was not asking, how much do you need so I can guarantee I never lift another finger again through the worst market in history? I was asking a completely different question. How much do I need to stop doing work I do not want to do and start living the way I actually want while staying honest with myself about the risk? Those are the 2 different questions. They have 2 different answers. So here's the thing I need you to sit with before you move on. The number was not wrong. The number was answering a question you never asked. And because nobody explained that to me, for years I looked at a 7-figure number and quietly assumed that people like me do not get to retire early. That's a trap. Not bad math, unexamined math. So now the real question, if the number is that big and I had a fraction of it, am I actually retired Or am I going broke slowly and telling myself a nice story about it? Hold that. I'm going to answer it completely in the third section with my real numbers on the screen. And I'm not going to make myself look good doing it. Next up, what actually moves your retirement date? Because here's what changed everything for me. And it took embarrassingly long to see it. Your retirement date isn't set by how much money you have. It's set by the gap between what you earn and what you spend, and how fast that gap fills the target. Two numbers, what comes in and what goes out. And almost everybody spends their entire working life pulling on the wrong one. The lever everybody chases is income. Get the raise, get the promotion, get the better job. And look, more income is good. But here's the trap nobody warns you about. A raise only moves your retirement date if your spending doesn't move with it. And for most people, it does move with it. You make more, so you get the bigger place, the newer car, the upgraded everything. Your income went up 30% and your gap did not budge. You did not get closer to freedom. You just got a more expensive version of the same treadmill. And now you need even more money to walk away from it. Think about that for a second. Every time you permanently raise your spending, you're raising the finish line at the same time you're running towards it. So let me give you the two levers you actually control. What you spend and what percentage of what you make that you keep. Lever one is spending. And I want to show you why it's the strongest thing you have, because it does two jobs at the same time. Say you cut $5,000 a year out of your spending. Not a fantasy amount, just $5,000. Job one. That $5,000 now goes into your savings instead of out the door. You're saving $5,000 more every single year forever. Job two, and this is the one that people miss completely. Your target just dropped because your number is your spending times 25. 5,000 times 25 is 125,000. One cut, you're shoveling faster, and the pile you need got $125,000 smaller at the same time. Now compare that to a $5,000 raise. A raise just one job. It adds $5,000 to what you save if you're disciplined enough not to spend it. But it does nothing to your target. Your target doesn't care what you earn. Your target only cares what you spend. That's the asymmetry. Cutting spending is roughly twice as powerful as earning more, dollar for dollar. And it's the lever you have complete control over starting today without asking anybody's permission. Lever two is your savings rate. That's just the percentage of your take-home pay that you actually keep instead of spend. And when you put those together, something almost unbelievable falls out. Your savings rate by itself tells you roughly how many years until you can stop. Not your salary, your rate. Watch this. Assuming your money grows about 5% a year after inflation, and you're aiming for 25 times the target, save 10% of what you take home, and you're looking at roughly 51 years of work. Save 20%, and it's about 37 years. Save 30%, and that's about 28 years. Save 40%, that's 22 years. Save 50%, about 17 years. Save 65%, and that's around 10 and a half years. Look at the top of that table and the bottom of it. Same person, same salary. The only thing that changed was the percentage that they kept. 51 years versus 10 and a half years. And notice what isn't in that table anywhere. Your income, it isn't there. Because the math doesn't care whether you make 50,000 or 500,000. It cares what fraction of it you keep. Somebody making 50,000 and saving half of it retires decades before somebody making 300,000 and saving 5% of it. That isn't motivational talk. It's just what the arithmetic says. Let me actually run this so you can see the date move in real time instead of taking my word for it. This is a skill I built, and before it asks me a single thing, it puts its own rules on the table. I'll show you right now as I type it in. I'll type in find my date. As I was saying, it puts its own rules on the table. 5% growth after inflation. Wait, if you read it out loud, what's your invested money? And it grows after inflation is taken out. So it's assuming that. The 4% rule, so we're getting the safest point here. It's assuming age 67 is the official retirement age. And it's the same math for every single person who runs it. No tuning, no flattering anybody. Now watch how it asks, because this is the part I actually care about. One question at a time. How old are you today? So how old am I? I'll just use an example here. 35. What is your take home per year? Or take home pay? I'll use C. 80 to 120. So you see, if I gave that range, it'll ask a follow-up question. 80 to 95, 95 to 110, 110 to 120. I'm just going to put in you can always put in the exact number. I'm going to put in 85,000. And you see now, what does my life actually cost? So I'm going to put in C, 60 to 90,000. Again, 60 to 70,000, 70 to 80,000. It's simplifying, getting a better number for you. I'm just going to put in 65,000. It's going to be easier for us to see the full number later. 65,000. Now savings, total invested savings today. And here I'm going to do exactly what most people do, which is pick a band. 50 to 250,000. So B. 50 to 250,000. Again, I wanted you to see it. It gives you a range again to get a little more specific. Between 50 and 100, 100 is 175, 175 to 250. Because, I mean, the difference between 60,000 and 240,000 is, or 250,000 is a lot. I'm going to type 175 to 250. Let's see what happens here. I'll show you. So you see the answer, it'll take, if you don't give a specific number and you give that range, it'll take the middle of that band. So it'll assume up 213,000. 213,000. So next question will be any income that keeps coming in after you stop. So what doesn't count? It's not saying how much you're making off Social Security. And here's the last question. This is the thing the skill does that the one-page worksheet simply can't do. So any income that keeps coming after you stop, under $12,000 a year, I'm going to put in. So it doesn't count Social Security. So that anything else like a pension or whatnot. Again, I'll do B, under 12,000. And again, it splits it up. Under 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 12, or just type an exact number. So I'll just say 8 to 12. And again, it shows you it's taking the middle. So it's call it 10,000. Now watch what that 10,000 does here, because it's really not just $10,000. Every year of income you keep is a year of spending you don't have to fund yourself. And your target is 25 times your spending. So the $10,000 a year of income takes $250,000 straight off your number. Let's see. It gives you a summary, and then yes, everything looks right. I'll just say yes, or yes, go ahead. And there it is. That's the date. You can stop at 56.8 if that's the arithmetic, the math behind it. If absolutely nothing changes between now and then, 56 years old. That's 10 years before you're 67. So there it goes. It shows your number, how it calculated it, what you save, what you have, your time to 1.3 million. If you're 35, that's 21 years. So that's using that 4%. And it gives you all this information. It even gives you this savings rate table to take a good look at that year, because I want you to see exactly how much it moves. And it's already moved for me. Look at the table underneath it, because that's the table. That table is the whole reason I built this thing. So cutting annual spending, you spend $5,000 less. That's about $400 a month. That's what $400 a month does. Just $400 a month. And you can keep going. Now it's showing a savings rate table. So starting from 0 at 5% real growth and 25 times target. Now, if you save 10%, it'll take you 51 years at your current pace. If it's 20%, it'll be 37 years, 30%, 28 years, all the way to 65%, that'll be 10.5 years. Years back to your life. And we all don't save that much, but let's say you do 30%, that's 28 years if you started earlier. So if you're older like me, you make a good salary, you can save half at 40 something, that's 17 years. So let's say 40, you can retire 57. Now look at that column on the right. That's not telling you how much you saved. Every budgeting app on earth already tells you that. And honestly, it's useless because a bigger number in a savings account doesn't feel like anything. You can't spend it and you can't feel it, so you ignore it. That column tells you what each cut is worth in years. Years off the date, years back in your life. And that's a completely different conversation to have with yourself on a Monday morning, because giving up $5,000 a year of stuff sounds like a sacrifice. Getting years of your 40s back doesn't sound like a sacrifice at all. So you make the same decision, you have the same math, completely different feeling, purely because somebody finally showed you the right column. Nobody shows you this column, which is exactly why you're going to run this with your own numbers tonight. So those are the two levers: spending, which does double duty, and your savings rate, which sets the timeline almost by itself. There's a third lever, and it's the return on your money. It's real, and it matters enormously in my case, but I put it in a different category on purpose, because it's the lever you control the least and the one that actually can hurt you. That's the entire third section, and I'm going to be honest about it in a way that probably makes some people uncomfortable. But first, quick break. If any of this is landing, join my free FOS community on School and download my free FOS guide inside. It's completely free. The link is in the description and the pinned comment below. And remember, the Find Your Date skill and the one-page guide I promised you at the start are waiting for you in there. And I'll show you exactly where to get that at the end of the video. Right, my numbers. Here is everything, and I'm not going to dress it up. I retired at 48 with close to $500,000. I don't have a pension and I rent. I don't own my place I live in. I pay for my own healthcare out of pocket, and I spend about $72,000 a year. So let's do the math that 4% rule would do on me. 72,000 out of 500,000. That's the withdrawal rate of about 14%. 14%. The rule says 4. I'm withdrawing at more than 3.5 times the rate that's supposed to be safe. And it gets worse. If my money didn't grow at all, and if it just sat there, 500,000 divided by $72,000 a year is about 7 years of runway. 7 years, which means on paper, I'm broke at 55, not 95. 55. That's the honest starting position. Anybody running my numbers would tell me that I'm not retired. I'm on a 7-year countdown. So why am I not panicking? 2 things. One of them I would do again, and one of them I wouldn't tell you to copy. Let me start with the property, because that's the part that actually built the pile. For years, I did the completely ordinary thing, and I want you to hear that, because it's where almost all of it started. I put money into my 401k automatically, every paycheck, without thinking about it. And I bought index funds, which just means a fund that owns a little slice of the whole market instead of trying to pick winners. Boring, automatic, years of it. Then I did something that was not boring. I pulled that 401k out early to buy one property. Now, when you take money out of your 401k before retirement age, 2 things happen, and neither of them are pleasant. You pay a 10% penalty straight off the top, and then you pay income tax on top of that whole withdrawal at your top rate, because it counts as income that year. Between the penalty and the tax, you can lose something close to 1/3 of it before you even bought anything at all. I knew that going in. I paid it anyway. I bought one property, I held it for about 5 years, and it went up over 100% in value. I sold it 2 years before I retired, and every dollar of that went into my portfolio. 2 years later, I stopped working. Now, I need to say this honest part out loud, because this is the single most copyable thing in this entire video. And it's also the most dangerous. I'm not going to tell you to do that. That property doubled, and it didn't have to. If it had gone sideways for those 5 years instead of going up, and properties do go sideways for years at a time, I would have had to pay a 10% penalty and a full tax bill for the privilege of moving my money from one place where it had been growing to another place where it was not. And I would still be working right now. There would be no video. I took a real risk and it went my way. Those are 2 separate facts, and I'm not going to blur that, and I'm not going to sell you that. Anybody who tells you a story like this without the second fact isn't being straight with you. The second thing is my portfolio, and I'll be brief because it's the part I'm least able to hand you. I run it aggressively. Index funds, value stocks, and commodities, which just means physical things like gold and silver rather than shares in a company. And it's averaged well above the 4% that the rule assumes is safe. That's the actual answer to the puzzle from the first section. My withdrawal rate is roughly 14%. My growth has run higher than that. So the pile has been refilling faster than I've been emptying it. That's it. That's the whole trick. There isn't a clever thing hiding behind it. But now let me tell you exactly what's wrong with that sentence, because this is the part that separates an honest video from a highlight reel. The word doing all the work in there is average. Average isn't every year. Average is what you get when you look backwards across a long stretch. It says nothing about what happens next year. And when you're withdrawing money to live on, the order of your returns matters enormously. There's a name for this, and it's called sequence risk. Let me put it in plain language. If you're still working and the market drops 30%, it's painful, but you're not selling anything. You leave it alone. It recovers. Nothing is permanently lost. But if you're retired and the market drops 30% and you still have to eat, so you sell, and so you're selling at the bottom. So the shares are gone permanently. They're not going to recover when the market comes back. That's why one bad year early in retirement does damage that a good year later cannot undo. Same average, completely different outcome, purely because of the order. I'm exposed to that fully. A bad enough stretch early at 14% withdrawal rate, and my 7-year runway gets a lot shorter than 7 years. So what's my plan if that happens? I want to answer that honestly too, because people expect something impressive here. I don't have an elaborate tripwire. I don't have a spreadsheet with a red line on it. If it stops working, I go back to work. And I would honestly be fine with that, because think about what the worst case actually is for me. The worst case is that in a few years, I have to earn money again, which is precisely where every single person my age already is right now, today. The difference is that I got these years. I got my 40s. I got to travel and be free and live the way I actually wanted during the years when my body and my energy were at their best. Nobody hands those years back to you when you're 67. That's the entire calculator, not the 4% rule, not the 7-figure number, not the withdrawal rate. It's in the years. So let me close the loop I opened at the start. Is the math wrong, or am I quietly going broke? Neither. The math was never wrong. It was pricing a promise. Never earn again, never adapt, never change anything, survive the worst case in history, and I simply did not buy that promise. I bought a different one at a much lower price, and the difference in price is paid in the risk that I can see and name. That's the honest trade. The 7-figure number buys certainty. I did not want certainty at that price. I wanted the years, and I was willing to keep the door open behind me. You might make the opposite choice, and that's genuinely fine. What isn't fine is making the choice without ever seeing the math, which is what almost everybody does. Let me show you my real numbers running side by side with what the calculator told me at the start. And here I'm back, and I've cleaned this up since the last walkthrough. Made this a little easier with the answers clickable, so you can see it on this turn. Now I'm going to give you my numbers, the same ones I gave out loud before. So how old am I today? I'm going to give the answer here instead of clicking, because I'll make it exactly as the other one. So 48, we'll enter. And question 2, what's your take home pay per year? This time I'm going to put in 0 because I'm matching what I did before. I'm getting the results for my when I retired, the actual runway I have. So that's 0. And that's the point. I'm not earning. Most calculators have nowhere to put that. And what does your life actually cost per year? And I'm going to put in the actual same thing as before, 72,000. But as before, you can click on any of the 4 here. Total invested today, and I'll put in the 500,000. Any income that keeps coming in after I stop, I'm going to put in none, as for the same example as before. So this is nothing's hidden. Nothing's routed in my favor. You can see here, just gives you what you put in if it's correct. And then if it's correct, you just press yes, run it. And watch what my own tool says about me. It doesn't even give me a date. There's no date to give because I'm not saving anymore. I'm actually drawing down. So it gives me this instead. My number is 1.8 million and I'm holding 27% or so of it. If my money doesn't grow at all, I've got about 7 years. It says 6.9 years. So I got until 54.9. And here in the table, if it grows at least 5%, I have 8.7 years. So it runs out at 56.7. So that's my own tool, the one I built, the one I'm about to give you, telling me on camera that I'm about to run out of money at 57. And here, as I highlighted in what the mainstream calculator gave me at the beginning of the video, the 7-figure verdict, I go back here and I see 1.9 million. And this one says 1.8 million. Two completely different tools, one built by a brokerage and one built by me, landing within $100,000 of each other. Look at the two of them. And neither of them is lying to me. You just heard me say the math was pricing a promise I didn't buy. This is that promise, priced twice on real numbers. One version says, don't even start. The other version says, I get as far as 57. I mean, both of them are right, and both of them are giving answers to the questions I never asked. Because I never planned on never earning another dollar. I planned on getting my 40s. So no, it's not being kind to me. I didn't build it to be kind. A calculator that only tells me the good news is worth absolutely nothing. And if it hands me an answer on my own video, you can trust what it hands you. And that gap between those two screens, that gap is 19 years of my life. That's my whole 40s and 50s. That's the travel, the freedom, the mornings that belong to me, all of it. That's what the gap is really made of. That was never money. It was years. So that's the math. Fully exposed. The inflated number and what it is really charging you for. The two levers you control and the one that does double duty. And my real math, including the parts that don't flatter me. If this was useful to you, hit the subscribe and turn the bell on so the next one actually reaches you. It genuinely helps. And here's the free thing I promised you at the very start. It's a cloud skill I built called Find Your Date, plus a 1-page guide in case you want to walk through it yourself. You put in the numbers, it gives you your actual retirement date, and it shows you exactly what every cut in your spending is worth in years off that date. That's the column nobody shows you. Both files are completely free, and they're sitting in the resources section of my free Freedom Operating System community on School. Go to school.com/FOS. The link is in the description and the pinned comment below. Go run your own number tonight, not someday, tonight, because the math isn't the hard part. The hard part is being willing to look at it. Stay free.